But as we grow, we have to grow our team and the responsibilities. We overuse the word delegation. It's more about spreading capabilities across your team. And so, yeah, a bit of a long-winded point there, but it is something that buyers look at very, very specifically beyond the financials and the data room and those details.
What you don't know is costing you commas and zeros. Welcome to the Owner's Profit Playbook. I'm Pat Mancuso. Most entrepreneurs think their biggest challenge is growing revenue, but the real problem is the profit leaks hiding inside their business. On this show, we break down the strategies, structures, and financial blind spots that separate struggling operators from truly profitable businesses. Because building a business is one thing, but building a business that creates wealth, that's the real playbook.
Welcome to the Owner's Profit Playbook. My name is Pat Mancuso, and I am excited to have you here today. Most business owners think they're building a valuable company, but they don't realize until it's too late what they've actually built isn't sellable. And what you don't know about your exit strategy is costing you commas and zeros, because the gap between what you think your business is worth and what a buyer will actually pay and what you'll actually net is where millions disappear. So today I'm joined by Brian is his co-founder and managing partner of Exitwise, and Exitwise helps owners prepare for and execute life-changing exits. Brian's journey started in a Big Five accounting firm, followed by an MBA at the University of Michigan. Instead of going into a traditional route, he jumped into a startup joint venture with Ford Motor Company. Holy Hannah, is Ford Motor Company struggling right now, which became the launchpad for co-founding Shift Digital, a company that helped transform digital performance across global automotive brands and dealer networks. Now at Exitwise, Brian brings 20 years of operational and transaction experience to one mission: helping owners close the gap. I always love that, close the gap, between what they built and what it's actually worth in the marketplace. And of course, Brian, no business owner ever undervalues what their company's worth. We connected through LinkedIn today, and I'm a follower of Exitwise, so we're super excited to have you here today. So welcome, Brian.
No, thank you, Pat. Very, very appreciative of being here. Love talking about this topic. Just excited to have the conversation.
So let's start with, you've been on both sides, building and exiting. So from your perspective, from consulting to Ford to Shift to Digital and building something sellable versus scalable, when did you realize building a business is about not just building it, but selling it, and those are two different things?
I like to say that we've all gone through our first M&A experience for the first time. And oftentimes you get into your second or third or fourth, and you're still learning many of the nuances that are critical to having success. I honestly, 12, 13 years into my first true startup, still didn't understand the basics of what prepping for an exit was, what it was going to feel like emotionally, what were the realities of actually preparing the business to be transacted. And quite honestly, and what I talk a lot about is the significant risk of failure and the very likely scenario of failure in M&A, because many of those elements that we don't understand the first time around weren't accomplished in an appropriate way. So for me, I came into my first M&A experience in my last true startup completely blind. And I would say our entire team largely came into that process largely blind, which led us to a process that didn't go the way that we had imagined and had planned for, to be perfectly honest.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but one of the things that you said is, and I'll paraphrase it because I won't say it the right way, but basically that there's a failure in that you didn't expect, that most business owners didn't expect. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what's the most common failure, the most common thing that happens in M&A?
Yeah, I'd say most of, and there's a lot of studies that have been put out. Obviously, investment bankers aren't proud to announce their failures, but the industry admits that the failure rate on M&A transactions is around 80%, which is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
I'd say that there's three reasons primarily that a transaction doesn't close, or at least the way I think about it. There is a business that is not prepared to sell, but still wants to go through a process, right? They either have a skeleton, a deep dark skeleton that they're not actively talking about.
Yeah.
The financials aren't organized properly. The story they're telling isn't entirely accurate. That they're just not ready.
They're
So
just
that's
not
one
ready.
reason.
Yeah.
They're just not ready. So that's one reason for failure. And on
Yeah.
the flip side of that, unfortunately, in today's day and age, there's a lot of buyers that aren't experienced either. And they put up a great front, they tell a great story. Everyone, of course, has access to capital, quote unquote. And it's not until you get deep into a process that you realize that you just chose poorly. You chose the wrong buyer. And so that's a secondary reason for a failed transaction is at the end of the day, they can't get a deal done. And then there's just intermediate things that happen through a process through diligence.
Yeah.
They always we always joke that time kills all deals. Time kills deals, but so do just unplanned speed bumps. Right? We had a deal in our very early days that was weeks away from closing, and COVID hit, and everything went on pause.
Yeah.
I think everybody has a classic story like that, but the real drama around it is had we just moved a little bit faster, if the executive team had pushed a little bit harder to get that deal done, we were literally weeks away.
Yeah.
That outcome would have been entirely different. So I guess to summarize, three big reasons: lack of preparation. We
Yeah.
we spent a ton of time coaching and prepping and mentoring our fellow founders on that. The flip side of sellers that aren't prepared to buy, or sorry, buyers that aren't prepared to buy, it's more difficult. Through experience, you can flesh out
Right.
good from bad oftentimes. And then, the best thing you can do is run into a process, run it professionally, do it as quickly as you can, and hope for the best.
Yeah. So it's interesting. My brain went to the failure of the acquisition after the close. But I love where you started because I've been fortunate enough, no expert by any stretch, so we'll just put that fully on the table. And that's not, I don't do M&As. I'm not involved in that. I work with people like yourself who are experts in this area, but I've learned a lot because of some of the people that I've been around. And Roland Frazier is somebody that I'm part of a group that a mastermind group with Roland and some other folks. But where I'm going with this is that I didn't. Most business owners, and first they think M&A and they go, "Well, the M&A doesn't apply to me because I'm a small to medium sized business owner." But the fact of the matter is that the due diligence that somebody is going to do to buy that business, if they're not prepared, the value either goes down or it doesn't close. True or false?
100% true.
And that's not discovered until the due diligence starts happening. Yet due diligence can be done by folks like you helping them get ready and get those systems in place. And I experienced this personally. We were looking at buying an accounting firm, and the value it was a small accounting firm, great reputation, all that, but the value is in the database. It's in the clients. They had no background on the clients, no, and it's like it's raised that awareness. So, go ahead. You were going to say
Yeah,
something.
I was going to say that a surprise for many sellers is that the best the best deal you're ever going to get is the one that was signed in the LOI. From that point forward, you are fighting.
Yeah,
And I hate to use the word fighting because
yeah,
oftentimes it is a very professional and polite process, but you are fighting to hold on to every dollar.
yeah,
And every time that something is either inaccurate, a little bit fuzzy, a little bit off, you lose a customer, there's a blip in the industry or the economics, you're going backwards. And that is a very emotionally difficult thing to deal with. We use this analogy of selling or giving away your favorite toy. It may be your favorite Matchbox car that you have loved for 20 years, right?
right.
You have so many amazing memories. Well, the buyer is looking at the scratch of the paint, and one of the wheels looks like it's about to fall off. And it's not as new and pristine as you made it look like, when you first started talking. And it's a really emotional thing because it is truly something that you have lived with and put your heart and soul into for a long time. So yeah, the point there being too many sellers come into a process, they sign an LOI, they think that's victory and the game is over. And they get really hung up emotionally on that going backwards when things aren't set up properly at the front end.
And do you see? I see this. Just want to make sure you would agree and get your feedback on it. A lot of business owners either look at selling because they're frustrated, they're burnt out, and or they get a tap on the shoulder and somebody says, "Hey, I'd like to buy your business," and they're not prepared at that point, right? And then a lot of business owners are thinking, "Okay, I'm going to sell it for 2 million." They don't. Most of them don't get 2 million at the table. And so what's important that you guys do is you really get them thinking in advance. And you mentioned the reason I wanted to go here is you mentioned customers. So if I'm selling a business and I'm a business owner and I go, well, I've got a great client and that client, brings in $500,000 every year to me, but your business is 1.5 million. Most people don't see that that's a problem, right?
Yep. Customer concentration is a difficult, and I don't know this is exactly where you're going, but customer conservation is a huge component of a successful sale.
Right.
And if you have a ton of your customers, of your biggest customers that make up a lot of your revenue, it
Right.
totally changes the complexion of a conversation. And God forbid you lose one of those key customers as part of the process,
Right.
it is gonna turn things upside down. So maintaining customer and client relationships throughout a diligence process is one of the most important aspects of a process. And it's really, really difficult in the case of founder-led businesses that find themselves doing most of the work.
Yep.
You now have two full-time jobs, and what you see and hear these horror stories is a founder that now they're putting 80% of their day-to-day into a diligence process. They forget to call and show up on client calls. Something goes sideways, they lose a client, and now they've wasted all this time in diligence. A deal has fallen apart, and the transaction isn't going well because, of course, the buyer is going to retrade. They want to change the deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's exactly where you're
To beat
going,
the
but
price down, right? I mean, that's the whole goal, dude, through diligence is to beat the price down.
that's exactly right. And that's, sometimes advisors, brokers, investment bankers can get a bad rap, but the sole reason to have an experienced advisory team, and this is all aspects of even what you do, right, is ensuring that your team is fighting the fights that are worth fighting. And when you're in those, deep, dark dog days of diligence, inexperienced brokers and advisors, they may be fighting the wrong fight. And the reason that you're paying for that team to be on your side is that they know through hundreds of transactions and all the training experience they've been through that these are the one, two, or three things that cannot be losses in the conversation. Everything else doesn't matter.
They're not negotiable. Yeah, yeah.
You just cannot lose on these one or two or three things. And I assume that that's exactly the situation that you're in with a lot of your clients as well.
Yeah. And I'd love your perspective on this. I think so. You got this whole baby boomer generation that's created so many businesses, and they really don't have a concept of their value, whether they're going to sell today, tomorrow, next month, next year. And what they're doing today, tomorrow, next month, next year, 5 years from now is impacting that exit value when they leave. So if somebody's listening today and they hear that and they go, well, that's me, which like 90% of the business owners, that would be them, right? What would be your advice to them hearing that?
I equate exit planning to, maybe it's an overused analogy to running a marathon or training for, Ironman. The best time to start training for a process like that is today.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you need to go out and run 20 miles this afternoon.
Right.
It means doing the basics on, starting to build a plan. If you don't have a plan yourself, start bringing people around you that know the right shoes to buy, know how the right nutrition, understand the training schedule to ramp you up in the appropriate path. And again, I think we suffer. I say we because I'm an entrepreneur as well, and I have been in these shoes. We suffer from two big things. One is the stigma of exits has a negative tone. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to imply to our teammates and our employees that we're thinking about selling. We don't want our customers to hear that something's happening. We don't want our competitors, right? So we stay away from
Overall risks, by the way, right? In the value, they're all
yes, of course. So we just don't think about it. We don't plan for it.
Right.
So that's one of them. And two, running a marathon sounds really hard. So I'll get to it next week.
Yeah.
And I think we get in our heads of I have to do all of this work tomorrow or it's never going to happen. And I coach on just the opposite. I think planning for an exit is a mandatory activity for every business owner and CEO. I don't care if you're thinking about exiting tomorrow, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, whether you're planning on handing it down to your children, your employees. Exit planning is one of your CEO responsibilities. And it can be, you can start with the absolute basics, things that you should be doing as a business owner, even if you're not transacting. But it's the basics and just starting the process and having internal conversations about everybody's goals and dreams and visions of what they want to accomplish and doing the baby steps. Suddenly you're 6 months down the line, you're like, this business is in pretty good shape. Like, I'm loving this thing again. We're seeing some momentum and things are really rolling. And oh, by the way, if somebody knocks on your door, you're actually in a great spot to actually respond.
And would you agree with this that, and well, let me ask you this, because I was going to say something. I'm going to ask you, if you were that business owner that hears what you just said, start today. What's the one thing you think is the most impactful thing for them to start to do today?
I'm gonna say one and a half things.
Okay, fair enough.
One, get a professional that understands buys and sells to help you organize your financials in a structured way. That doesn't mean a QuickBooks extract. We all have QuickBooks extracts, right? That is not the right file to send a potential carrier, right? And we're not talking about rocket science here. You can go to any number of CPAs, fractional CFO firms like myself that can very efficiently build out some core basic financials that represent history and help you to artfully think about the future.
Right.
That is number one without question. The half is kind of the baby steps around organizing documentation. We hear this word data room a lot.
Yeah.
It's code for just make sure you're starting to store your core documents in one place. Your employee contracts. The number of times I start working with business owners and you say, okay, who are your top 10 customers and can I have your countersigned agreements?
Yeah.
Nope, we don't have those. Like Bob had that one and he left, and this one isn't countersigned, and I don't know what happened to the other three. It's the basics of the things that we should be doing as business owners to run our business effectively. So that's my one and a half pieces of advice.
Yeah, they're entrepreneurs. They're
And I say we because I've been there. I know what this feels like.
Oh yeah. I experienced a not so great exit. I have the horror story to understand what that cost me. And and yet we had a highly successful company, and that didn't matter at that point. And we weren't selling. I was just exiting from a partnership. And so yeah, I get it. Do you think, you talked about exit and you talked about the anxiety around it. And, I've read statistics that, 70 to 80% of business owners who exit within 6 months are extremely unhappy with their exit. And so, there's a number of reasons for that, right?
Sure.
One of the things that it really bothers me as an entrepreneur who works with business owners and, unfortunately at times gets to share surprises with them is that they've never really thought about the exit. And what I mean in thinking about the exit is not the process for the exit. It's how much money am I going to need when I exit? What does my life look like? How does it change? And so talk to me from your perspective about that conversation.
I feel like this is a planted question because
no, it's not. No, because I live this every day with people. Yeah. I go, so have you decided what you want to exit with when you sell your business? Because, oh, by the way, you might have forgotten, you're going to have tax ramifications when you sell it. Oh, by the way, you've taken advantage of tax strategies along the way. Those are going to come back to bite you. And, oh, wait a minute. Now that you don't own a business, you don't have as much tax strategy to reduce your income.
hmm The reason I say it feels like a planted question is because I think you and I are very, very well aligned in our opinions here. When we kick off a process, or when we're about to kick off a process with an executive team, whether it's a singular founder, CEO, or it's a smaller executive team, I always encourage them to individually go lock yourself in a room for 2, 4, 8 hours just over the weekend. Some people like coffee, some people like water, some people like a glass of wine. Bring a notebook, some quiet music, and
Yeah.
just like calm down, get out of life for a
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
and design your ideal 2 years into the future. What if you could design, forget about all the diligence and all the chaos of a transaction, design what your ideal 2 years from now looks like in detail? Not, I'd like some extra money and I want to play
Yeah.
a little bit of golf. Like, really, what
Yeah.
do you want that life to look like?
Right.
Because once there's clarity in not just what their life is going to be like, but their families like, their teammates and employees, what do they care about the logo on the side of the building? I had a CEO that tried to take a piece of artwork off the wall after closing, and we hadn't talked about it. And it's not about the artwork. Like
No.
I think it was a reprint. It was valueless, but to him, it was very emotional. And you have to get through these details of what do I really want in this process? Because too many times a founder will get a knock on the door. They'll
Right.
go through the process, they'll have more money, but they haven't really thought about what is on the other side of that. And it's not enough to, I want to hang, I want to spend more time with family and I want to play golf. That's
Right.
just not the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love the question. I feel really passionate about it. I really forcefully push this idea
Yeah.
with our clients because I need them to come back to me with what is their ideal design, and that's where folks like you come in, um, to help design that lifestyle post transaction, right? To help bring life to what this is actually going to look like, and if it is possible, if their dream is to own an incredible vineyard in Italy, and the transaction post tax is $300,000, we have some work to do,
Yeah. We have a lot of work to do.
right?
Uh, so, so, the I think what you just said, I want to tag this back into the statistics that I threw out because they're not doing this stuff. That probably contributes to their 70% of being unhappy on their exit because it wasn't, really like all the stuff you're talking about doing is probably why there's that high percentage.
Without question. And I was just presenting at a entrepreneurial conference yesterday, and a lot of them came up to me after the fact as we were talking about this topic. I think it's the same as a founder that is in chaos mode of building. And
Right.
if you just keep responding to emails and showing up to calls and writing contracts and doing stuff, at some point you wake up and like, I don't really know what this business has become. Like, this isn't what my vision was. I've just been doing stuff, and my advice is I get and understand that founder led businesses, it's chaos. But you
Yeah.
have to slow down and think about what you're building and the life that you want to design. Forget about exit. In that case, what is the life you want to design? When it comes to exiting, it's the exact same thing. If you don't think about in detail of what that future, what future you're striving to achieve, you're likely not going to get there. And
Not
then
not be happy.
thus the unhappiness
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
I didn't really think about what I was going to do next Tuesday. Like, I don't know. It was really fun for 30 days to sit on the sidelines, but now I'm bored out of my mind. I miss going to, working with my team. I miss the energy and outlet that I had. If you don't come to terms with that, you're going to get to the other side and not really appreciate the life that you've created.
Yeah. I'm assuming you probably have hundreds, thousands of stories about people who come to you at various stages of the process, maybe even some that come after the exit. Let's go in front of the exit. What are some of the big horror stories or horror issues that you feel would be the most important to share with people listening so that they make the transition to getting their crap in order before they get the tap on the shoulder or the burnout or the frustration?
Um, I'd say that the most realistic ones are where they weren't really honest about the state of some of their customer agreements and the relationships that they had, and they're representing growth and long term engagements. And you get into diligence, and it's, hey, sorry, I lost that big one, 2 weeks ago, or we had a customer that canceled, or we've seen some churn. Again, a lot of times this happens. We've talked about this because of the distraction of the process. You're
Yeah.
trying to do two things at once, but those are really, really devastating. I mean, that the fastest way to lose a transaction or to lose significant value in a transaction is to lose customers, to
Right.
experience churn. We had the real horror stories. We had just pure fraud in one transaction that we didn't understand until very late in the game. And this transaction was tens of millions of dollars. Um, I don't know that it's a bad human situation. It's clearly something that should have been dealt with very early in the process. And had we talked about it early,
Yeah.
there's a way to talk about
To
it. But
address it. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but in that case, the CEO was married to the head of the purchasing team of their largest client, and they had different last names, and no one knew that they were related. And she was signing off on every contract. And so you get to the goal line and you want to start talking to customers and discussing these relationships. And that one didn't go well.
Yeah.
That didn't go well. We've also found things, and it's, to be perfectly honest, this is probably a miss for us early in the game. That should sound obvious. We missed on a background check some legal issues. One of the founders had spent a good while in federal jail for some pretty serious stuff early in his life, and it'd been a long time. And I'm a big believer of everybody deserves second chances. He had built an incredible business, but you
Right.
can't, the parallel is you can't tell your soon to be wife, at the altar, hey, I didn't tell you I was in jail for 6 years.
Right. Because, and the reason that that's important, because people may not connect the two, but a lot of times when companies sell, it's not a full cash transaction, right?
Correct.
They're gonna try to tie up that owner for a period of time, make the part of the acquisition contingent his or her buyout. There's things there, and like, okay, now if you're gonna, yeah, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Well, I thought you were gonna say, Brian. Oh, go ahead.
Let me because I appreciate you slowing that down to go deeper into that issue. The issue with having a criminal record, again, everybody's pretty open-minded about, this was a great business and he had come from a bad place and now a very good place. But when it's a big transaction, call it 50, 60, 70 million dollars, and a bank is lending a significant portion of the funds for that transaction, they do not want to find out something like that on the goal line. They want to put pause on everything. They want to go deep, 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 to understand the personal background of what's going on, and that's why a deal will close, will pause or fail ultimately in that case.
Yeah. And again, I thought when you started, I love that you started with be honest, because you could take that anywhere, right? You could take
Mhm.
that anywhere. And from what I know, and I've had an opportunity to uh, hang out with a pretty highly recognized attorney in California who that's all they do is due diligence. And having heard all the due diligence of what they do, how they do it, the story, I'm like, holy, I mean, there's like business owners don't have any clue because they're not thinking about that right now, which is why you guys and what you do is so, so important. So I'll figure it out when I'm ready to sell.
I've heard that one before. Yes.
And so how do you address that? Like, I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but like, how do you address it to get somebody to change that thinking? I know start today, I know it's a marathon, but I mean, really, like, okay, I'm six, let's just say I'm 65
Mhm.
and I want to exit at 70. I'll figure it out when I sell. How do you
Right.
respond?
It is tough to push somebody towards something that they really need to do themselves. Fill in the blank with any analogy, right? It's
Right,
it's to me. I always like when a personal trainer will say, "Don't focus on losing 20 pounds. Focus on building the daily habits
right.
of working out. Go walk for 10 minutes, right? Go do something." And I think to me, that's always where I start. Now, if somebody's not willing to carve out 1 to 5% of their week to start doing some of these basic elements, I question whether they're serious about that future exit. And of course, we would love to help them when it gets to 5 years down the road.
Yeah,
But for unfortunately for some or many of those founders, they don't realize that transaction, right? Something happens, especially, and I hate to say this, as we age and you have so much on the plate of an aging founder, like people get sick, like
yeah.
life
Oh, yeah,
events happen.
yeah,
And as much as I can say, okay, I'm 65 today, I'll do it when I'm 70, maybe you don't have as much energy in the tank. Maybe you start slowing down mentally a little bit, or God forbid, there's a real health issue.
yeah.
You just don't know what's around that corner. And so I am a huge believer in daily repetition, building habits. This isn't just about exiting your business, organizing your financials, collecting your customer contracts, making sure your employees all have kind of up to date employee handbook
Yeah.
signatures. These are all things that make your business better, right? And the irony of it is, like, we know we all probably need to lose a little bit of weight. I speaking from personal experience. I don't go out and jog or lift weights every day. I should. I haven't built that repetition. And so I get it. Like, it's hard to start, but until you can start putting yourself through those daily kind of exercises and doing little chunks, typically with a high quality advisor or a founder that's been through it, it's not as big a deal as we make it out to be. Now a full process, once you get into diligence, depending on the size and the complexity of business, of course, that is a really onerous process. No matter how much you prepare.
Sure.
But I can promise you, if you try to run a marathon, having bought your shoes the night before, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well.
So, where do you think business owners lose the most amount of their valuation? Like, what part of their business is not where it need? Like, there's many parts, right? There's many parts, but where do you think they lose the most?
Well, it kind of goes into this theme of waiting. Too many times business owners are waiting until the business has plateaued, it's lost some steam. Maybe again, maybe they've lost a client that has been core, and now they're burned out, they're tired, they're sick of dealing with this, and it starts to look a lot like a fire sale.
Yeah,
And that's when it gets really tragic. When you're in a process where you lose the most value, I feel a bit like a broken record, but ultimately it's achieving the forecasted numbers that you put on paper in the early marketing materials. Just
right.
my if I have 3 or 4 or 5 must do's to my clients, it's do not miss your forecasts under any circumstance. He had one that we closed at the end of last year. Thankfully it was still a good transaction, but he missed his revenue targets by like 30% in a quarter that we were in due diligence, and it totally changed the transaction.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking.
Well, and it changes the transaction at a time. My background is real estate. And so, early on in real estate, you understand, you try to keep the emotion out. But the fact of the matter is there is emotion. So you're
Mhm.
into this transaction, and now that 30% quarter drops. Like, you have two options. You're going to have to continue forward with the deal. Hopefully the buyer stays in, and or the deal goes away. And now you have to literally start all over, which doesn't help the value, right?
Yeah, I think maybe me trying to more succinctly make my point here, as business owners and founders, we are always optimistic. We always believe these forecasts are going to go through the moon. That is how we're conditioned. I am part of that game.
Yep.
On the flip side, you could also play sandbagger and be too conservative. The magic in forecasting for an M&A transaction is being both optimistic but realistic, because you can't bring a company to market if it has been stagnant or declining for many quarters, many years. But if you get everybody excited about these really optimistic forecasts that are going to the moon, and then you miss,
Yeah.
that is a problem.
Yeah, because they're banking on that, right?
That's exactly right.
I go back to when you're talking about forecasts, and so when I was looking at this accounting firm, one of the things that I did for some due diligence is I called my accounting firm and I said, okay, if you were looking at buying this firm, what would your multiple be? What would you look at? And what was really interesting is one of the first things they brought up was the prices that this particular law firm was charging for their work, and said in the response that I got was, well, we would not pay this based upon where their prices were. And by coincidence, about 6 months before the owner decided to sell, they raised prices, thinking, you know what I'm saying. So it's like, and so that's why that's where that experience comes from. So let me ask you this question: you're mostly on the seller side, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but you get to be on the buyer side because they're part of the transaction, so to speak, right? What do you see are the biggest red flags the buyers see immediately in a transaction? Or do they raise?
Well, I'd say right now, and this may not be a surprise. The two biggest questions that we get is around AI, and question one is AI going to destroy this industry? Or question two, does AI help supercharge this business to go to the moon?
Is there opportunity there? Yeah.
And the business owner in its current state may not be capable of realizing that AI benefit.
Right.
But the flip side is, if this industry is about to get decimated, and I'm not a doomsday kind of guy,
Right.
I think there's going to, we're going to find a healthy balance between traditional industries and AI. But there's some industries that are going to go backwards because of the power that LLMs can bring to the game, and no buyer wants to be buying in an industry that is going to go backwards. And so I would say that is one of the first questions that we see over and over and over from buyers, and they want to know the founder's perspective. And there isn't if there isn't a great answer, a complete thought around how AI is going to either benefit or challenge this business, like that is a red flag. Like, I'm out. I'm moving on to the next opportunity. Because if you're not aware of how this could change this business in the industry, there's a lot of other areas of the business you're probably not focused on.
Well, and is this fair to say not only the business in the industry, but the business in the industry of your customers?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, just the extension of those things.
That's a great point.
It's the AI thing. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother topic, right?
Sorry I brought it up.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. Like, I get 3 or 4 different emails a day on stuff I'm trying to learn about, case stay up on, and it's like, wait a minute, yesterday this was the best thing.
Yes.
Today's this the best thing. Oh my gosh.
It is difficult to live in a perpetual world of feeling like I'm a D minus.
Yeah.
And as much as a time as we spend in educating ourselves, we perpetually feel behind, right? Every day something new comes out and you can't keep up. So I think just awareness and doing our best to be educated. Maybe a non-AI related point is the nuance of founder versus the founding team or executive team. And the dynamics change, obviously, in a SMB or a Main Street business, or something that's relatively small, maybe less than 10 employees, and a business that has 50 or 100 or 250 team members. But that balance between a singular voice that is representing, I do everything, or I control everything, or I have to make every decision, versus an executive team that clearly has roles and lanes and a lot of different talent, that can speak confidently about the things that they're doing and they're responsible for, and a CEO and or founder that understands what they're building, but doesn't have to be in every little detail. That is really, really important.
Yeah.
And it changes the dynamics of the conversations right out of the gates.
Right.
It is natural for us as a founder to represent we are seeing and doing everything because we have. That is literally how we built
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
business.
That's just part of the DNA.
But as we grow, we have to grow our team and the responsibilities. We overuse the word delegation. It's more about spreading capabilities across your team. And so, yeah, a bit of a long-winded point there, but it is something that buyers look at very, very specifically beyond the financials and the data room and those details. It's how does this CEO interact with his or her team, and who's really doing the work here? Because it's incredibly relevant to the post-transaction success or failure.
Yeah. And how loyal are they? And are they tied up for a post? I mean, there's so many things just
Yes.
around that topic. So how do I know if I'm actually exit ready?
This is going to be entirely self-serving, but I always suggest that if you're thinking about that future and you want to know if you're ready, go find a high quality advisor that can not just give you a valuation or has done a bunch of transactions. I like to coach towards advisors that look at your business through the eyes of a buyer. That
Right.
they spend 1 to 3 months not painting pretty pictures, but
Hmm.
challenging you on the 5 to 10 things that a buyer is going to challenge you on, and it's just a dress rehearsal. And you may not like to be, going back to the Matchbox car, you may not like to hear that your toy is kind of ugly, but that is the best advisor that you can have on your team. Is one that's going to say, hey, you just put a little paint here, like fix this wheel. Let's talk through your answer to these questions.
Right.
Let's make sure that these different people or components are represented properly. I think that is the best place to understand where you're truly at in the process. And you may find out that your value isn't what you had hoped, and that you have more black stars than you would like, but it's better to find that out in a safe environment with an advisor that you trust than when you're in a full process, hair on fire, right, fighting for your life.
Yeah.
That is my best answer for how you know if you're ready or not.
Yeah. You know what's funny, Brian, is that everything you just said in the last 3 minutes, I go back to bringing a business owner to back to selling a house. Because as a real estate agent, my job was not to come in and now I looked at real estate differently than a lot of real estate agents. They would go in and tell the seller what they want to hear, how much money they're not going to get just so they could get the transaction. Where my job was to say, okay, so here's what the buyer is going to see, here's what they're going to discount, here's what you need to do to add your value. And so it's a lot of the same thing, right? I mean, it's just different variables, if you may, different
Yes.
variables. Okay, so first of all, this has been amazing, and we shift now as our theme is the owner's profit playbook. So we come to the fourth quarter, the 2 minute drill. So
Okay.
I'm gonna throw things at you. Just your first quick response. How do I know if I'm actually exit ready?
Work with an advisor that's been there before.
Okay. What increases valuation the fastest?
Um, Clear and articulate financials, both post and future.
What should owners stop doing immediately?
Talking to their friends about what their valuation might be.
Yeah. I'm sure that you'll agree with me that you've never met a seller who's overvalued their
No, never.
never. It's one of the reasons why, again, my passion is to help business owners close their gaps and avoid the pitfalls. And so we actually have a tool at our website that provides them it's not a full-blown evaluation or full-blown valuation, but it's a tool that they can use to get some reality based upon some data points. And I think it's so important to understand where they are, not where they are in their mind, but where they are. And this conversation now is here's what you got to do to get to where you want to get to. So yeah, oh my gosh, Brian, I mean, we could probably do a series on this, like once a
I'd be
week.
happy to.
year. And well, hey, I'm going to take you up on that because that's where really I mean, so you have the expertise, you have the experience, you have the years, and yet a lot of stuff what you were talking about today, we could drill down on, employee agreements, non-competes, the value of those, key man insurance. There's so many things in there that they're just not thinking about.
Hmm.
Buy sell agreements. I'm in business with my partner who unfortunately passed on. Now I'm in business with his wife who was not a great, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Everything I'm talking about.
Totally. And even outside of your and my specific industry, there's some incredible law firms that for a very marginal amount
Yeah.
of money will do a legal assessment of your business, and ensure that those legal documents are best in class, and that if there's things that are missing, they can update. And yeah, again, doing those baby steps early is really, really helpful. Really
Yeah.
helpful.
So
So
the part that scares me about all this is that there's so many businesses that are not prepared.
mhm.
And there's so much in that baby boomer generation that wants to exit or would like to exit or in man, oh man, oh man, it's just this is so helpful to them.
No, it's why I appreciate your platform and a lot of our fellow founders that are out there trying to support through education.
Oh
That
yeah,
that is, I think, so important to what we all do, and it's our responsibility as practitioners that have been there before.
right.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, go finish, go
no,
ahead.
no, no, you're good. You're good.
Well, you said that, and I just want to tag onto this because it's sticking with me. So I'm part of a CPA group, a very highly respected CPA who does a lot of education and knowledge, and he shared in a post the other day about a $2.3 million loss for a business owner who relied on AI for tax. And the AI produced a document that basically cited case law, cited tax law, none of it existed, but yet this guy went on AI. So my point is that AI is great, and yet experience and knowledge and been there before. They can't pull AI can't pull that stuff out of your guy's head yet. They just can't. It,
I equate AI sometimes to like your very best friend that has had 20 beers. He may be very trustworthy
yeah.
and incredibly confident in whatever it is that he or she is saying. Doesn't mean he's right.
No, no.
It's coming from the right place.
It's yeah.
And
No, best of
and
intentions.
and and there may be a lot of confidence behind whatever that's being said, but yeah, we've unfortunately all learned a couple of those lessons the hard way with AI, that you can't just trust everything out of the
No,
box.
no. So, Brian, if somebody were to want to reach out, which we hope that they've got value out of this and understand they do need help, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm most active on LinkedIn, Brian Dukes at Exitwise, and my email address, feel free to reach out. It's Brian, Brian, at exitwise.com. In fact, for your listeners, if they want to just get started at no cost, we have a founder assessment
Yeah.
that we're happy to send. Email me. And I'm happy to send you that document just to give you a sense of kind of where you're at in your founder journey, how close your business is to being able to be transactable, and gives you some education along the way. So yeah, I appreciate
Well,
that.
you guys, I think you guys are producing a weekly or by you're producing a newsletter, and I get copies of it all the time, and there's so much value in it. So I encourage people to reach out to Brian and his team. And again, Brian, thank you so much for being here today. Listeners, our goal is to help you close the gap and avoid what you don't know about commas and zeros. And this is a big topic because the commas and zeros get bigger on your exit or get smaller on your exit. And that's why this conversation was important. So please subscribe, tell your friends, share this, and definitely reach out to Brian and his team if you're thinking about exiting. So again, Brian, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely.
If you're serious about building a more profitable business, make sure you subscribe to the Owner's Profit Playbook so you never miss an episode. And if you know another business owner who could benefit from this conversation, share it with them. To learn more about how we help business owners uncover hidden opportunities and strengthen their financial strategy, visit MancusoCG.com. And remember, What you don't know is costing you commas and zeros.